Obelisk is a Japanese clothing brand, founded in 1999 by designer Yasunori Kaneko. He often goes by the moniker Dr. Kaneko, and that's how I'm going to refer to him throughout this video. Leather, biker culture, rock and roll aesthetics are what make up Dr. Kaneko's idea of coolness, and essentially that is Obelisk. Those are themes that have often been explored within fashion. Specifically, what draws me to this brand, what I love so much about Obelisk, is Dr. Kaneko's unique outsider perspective that he brings to his work. Obviously, he's the head designer, he's the founder of Obelisk and the sister brand Zeitgans. Makiko Kaneko, his wife, is in charge of women's wear, and also Yoshihiko Ishibashi is like Dr. Kaneko's second in command from what I've learned, and he's in charge, or was in charge, of the children's clothing that Obelisk would put out. As I said, there were two brands, Obelisk and also Zeitgans, formerly Zeitgeist, renamed in 2012. Zeitgans is described by Dr. Kaneko as more kind of minimalist, and Obelisk has more kind of bohemian, rock and roll, kind of hippie influences from what I've seen. Personally, I would describe his work in Zeitgans as more kind of its time, meaning contemporary. I think the definition of the word Zeitgeist really does a lot in describing the aesthetic of this brand. And then in terms of Obelisk, I would say that it's more completely of itself, meaning while it is, referential to the past, the clothes that he puts out there, it's really future focused. It's like entirely its own thing. In comparison to the clothes he put out under Zeitgans. For a long time, Dr. Kaneko operated a blog on this website, Amoeba, and it was very helpful for me trying to understand this guy's philosophy, the kind of why behind his choices in regards to making clothes. I wanted to start with kind of a quote. I realized that what is cool is actually considered unreasonable in the eyes of society. I learned that new and cool things aren't always well understood at first. It was around this time that I began to understand what is meant to be cool. So what was so cool about the Beatles, the group that started it all? What was so cool about the Beatles, who were said to have started a revolution? And then he goes on, Dr. Kaneko's views on fashion and business. What we can learn from history here is be a nail that sticks out, be an outsider. And that was back in 2013. He said that he basically laid out his whole kind of upbringing. He lived in the countryside of Yamagata, and basically he was introduced to like the kind of 60s rock and roll British invasion bands and just kind of, I guess, those aspects of Western culture, and he kind of absorbed that, and that culture is very much expressed in his own way through his work in Obelisk. It's also worth noting the flagship store of Obelisk is located in Taito City, which is like around Tokyo. I think it is a part of Tokyo. This is significant, playing into that whole kind of outsider thing, because the store isn't in Shibuya or Harajuku. It isn't in a more traditionally kind of high fashion area. It's in this, the Taito City, from my understanding, is a more kind of artisanal area where that kind of work is celebrated. And he's a leather craftsman. And it also does play into that idea of an outsider to the kind of, I guess, Tokyo fashion scene, in a way, in terms of the physical location of his atelier. Dr. Kaneko really exemplifies why I think Japanese people are so good at transmuting Western culture. I see Japanese people as very creative, but also very sincere people quite often. And that is like the perfect combination, because you're creative enough to come up with something truly new, to think futuristically and to come up with new ideas. But, the honesty, the sincerity that I've seen in a lot of Japanese art and in the people, kind of, to me, grounds them enough to not engage in irony, or to not, irony can be quite cheap in fashion, and I don't see anything ironic in Dr. Kaneko's work. It is super sincere, and it's an honest, true expression of what he sees to be an individual. And I think it can be so difficult to kind of straddle the line between a costume, between performativity, between putting on a costume, and sincere self-expression. And that's, I think, something that he does incredibly well, is being able to straddle that line and to sincerely put out something that doesn't come off as a costume or doesn't come off as a joke in any regard, but still is futuristic and still kind of pushes the limits, especially in men's fashion. That can be incredibly difficult. Now I want to move more into the physical. I want to talk about the attributes of the items made by Obelisk that I really appreciate. Starting with necklines, this is another area where it's just super unique. I don't know if I've seen a designer in terms of menswear be able to experiment so much with the different necklines that they offer. So basically, right, what is so important about this, it gets talked about how the kind of neckline frames the face. It's the part of the outfit that decides how your face is kind of perceived the most. What I think gets talked about less is how the neckline on a garment can decide how your whole basically body, especially your torso, looks. So for example, like a higher neckline can make your shoulders look wider, a lower neckline, deeper cut, or like a V-neck can make your torso longer. And it's a much more subtle thing, especially with menswear. This is a super difficult line to avoid crossing while still pushing the boundaries. In terms of not crossing over into performativity, into costume, into ridiculousness, but still taking risks. And I just think he's incredible at it, as you can see from all of the different options. Similarly, in terms of the hemline, so where the garment ends, that is another aspect that kind of, it controls your proportions, I would say the most out of all of the parts of the garment. It's well known now that, a shorter hem, like that kind of cropped, boxy fit, can make your legs look longer. It can make you look taller when done correctly. And then also a long line hem or a longer, lower, I guess, cut hem can make you, is really good for layering, basically. So if you have the hem of a top that you're wearing that goes down really far, it makes it way easier to kind of layer things of different lengths on top of it. What doesn't get explored much at all in terms of menswear is like an asymmetrical hem, and that's something that Dr. Kaneko does to great effect in his work in Obelisk. And I just think that is kind of two things that, you have control over that don't get explored as much as they should. The neckline, the top of the garment, and the hemline in terms of menswear. And he, to me, is like a kind of pioneer in terms of that. Another way that Obelisk pushes the boundaries of masculine fashion is with the wrap, attachment, skirt, pants. This is heavily influenced by punk culture, punk rock culture. And this is something that, you really have to do it well if you're going to do it. It can be a really interesting different kind of silhouette, especially, as I said, for menswear. And to be able to present this in a way that it doesn't look like a joke, doesn't look like a costume, is a real skill. It's important to cover the leather craftsmanship quality of Obelisk. I'm going to be completely honest, on a technical level, I know nothing about this, so I'm not going to get too in-depth in that regard. I wanted to start with a quote from Dr. Kaneko. When I started working my current job, I was wearing off-the-rack leather jackets and pants, but they were stiff, heavy, and the silhouette was so bad. So I used to be a bag designer, so I was surrounded by a lot of beautiful leather. Let's use the leather to make our own custom-designed leather pants, and that's who I started with. And before I knew it, I had launched a brand and company called Obelisk. Dr. Kaneko was first a biker. He rides Harleys, and he wanted something better than that was on the market in regards to levers and like riding gear. He was working as a craftsman making bags, so he's basically primed. He's in the best position. He's around all this great level. He knows what he wants and he knows how to put it together, and so he's basically the perfect person to work with this material. A few other interesting things I found about Obelisk. This is one of the earliest blog posts on their Amoeba blog. It's back in 2008, they actually sold a phone background screen graphic decal that you could go and purchase, like a phone background. This is before smartphones, and people would go and purchase this for 500 yen, I guess. And I can just see, look at the amount of effort that kind of went into the design language, kind of gothic, heraldic logo next to these gradient knit leather jackets. Not something I've really seen before, going from one material to the next like that. I'm not exactly sure how this works, but it's just something interesting I thought worth highlighting. And then finally, these look incredibly beautiful to me. Sea lion leather or sea lion fur bangles, and then also you can see here the material used as a collar for a jacket. just not something that you really see. I don't even think where I live it's legal to even use sea lion or to procure it in any way. But it just it's just, I guess it shows that Dr. Kaneko is like really a master of leather, of craftsmanship. He's using all different types of leather. So basically, that's why I love this brand so much. Yasunori Kaneko, he's a true outsider. And that's a common theme that I see in a lot of designers that I appreciate. I was recently reading an older interview with Eddie Slimane, and he described himself the same way. He's this photographer. He's always sees himself as someone kind of outside looking in. And I think that puts people in the perfect position to kind of add their own filter a certain aspect of culture through their own lens, and that's what I see in Dr. Kaneko's work in Obelisk, and that's what I really appreciate about it.